Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. And Zainab, thank you so much for coming to today's webinar and for sharing, your knowledge and experience in this field. So for you personally, I know you're extremely interested in space and you've had some very amazing achievements at such a young age. So what's your favorite space phenomena?
Great question. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. Again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come to watch. And I feel like I can learn a lot from you too. So I'm glad to be here. Yeah, in terms of my favorite space phenomena, so I used to head up the astronomy club in my high school. So every week, it was a new subject, it was a new topic. It was from, dwarf stars to exoplanets to the Big Bang and all this stuff. But the one that fascinated me the most was dark matter. And I know that one is popular amongst a lot of people. But it's very hard for me to wrap my head around it just because it's like 85% or something of our universe is dark matter, but we can't see it. And we don't even know how to fully study it other than maybe through the motions of planets and the motions of galaxies through space. But we don't have any detection device for it yet. And so we don't understand 85% of our universe. And I find that that specific space phenomenon to be mind blowing because we think we know so much. We study all these STEM things on Earth, science, math, engineering. And when it comes to the universe and specifically dark matter, we know almost nothing. So I would say that's my favorite space phenomenon because there's so much unknown. There's so much to be discovered.
Yeah, definitely, especially because dark matter affects many things in our universe. And so if we were able to one day really understand it, it would really open the field of physics and astrophysics in an extremely amazing way.
Absolutely.
When did your passion for space first start? Was there like a catalyst in your life that inspired you to dream of becoming an astronaut?
It wasn't like, sometimes you hear these stories, but it wasn't just like there was this one moment and something happened and I was like, yes, this is what I love. It wasn't like that. It was, from a very young age, it was something as small as just paying attention, paying attention to the world around you, to the world within you, just like something as simple as looking at the night sky and questioning what is out there, what is beyond what I can see. And I grew up also reading and watching a lot about astronomy and space. People talk about bedtime stories before bed. My dad actually made us watch, not made us, we voluntarily did it, but he would come in the room, bring his phone, and we would watch the Cosmos series by Carl Sagan instead of a bedtime story. So, and it talked a lot about the concepts of time and space, the fabric of time and space and all that stuff. And as I got older, seeing more people like Roberta Bondar, she's a Canadian astronaut and a neuroscientist, and seeing the amazing things that they were doing and how space really helped humanity in many ways in terms of not just, knowledge and discovery and getting people passionate about science, but about discoveries that we've made and tools that we use on Earth now, that were invented in space, things like that. But I think most of all, it was when I thought about space, when I learned about space, when I looked out at the night sky, it really made me aware of the connectedness between ourselves and the universe. We're a part of it and it's a part of us. And it sparked the sense of wonder and curiosity and imagination and love of learning. And it made me feel like I was something, part of something much greater than just myself. That there were, and that we were all connected in some bigger way. So I would say it was that really sparked my love for space.
Wow. And like many people dream of becoming an astronaut or like going into space. I think, every kid at some point has like wondered what it would be like to, be an astronaut. But like few really have the opportunity to leave Earth's atmosphere. So how did you make the decision to apply and join the Virgin Galactic Future Astronaut Program? And how are you preparing yourself mentally and physically for like this mind-blowing opportunity?
Also a great question. Well, firstly, I will, it's an extreme privilege to be able to do something like this. And, you know, to even dream of doing something like this. But here's the thing, I said I love space, but my love of space wasn't enough for me to be like, okay, I want to do this Virgin Galactic thing and go to space for fun. To me, I would feel an extreme sense of guilt, almost, and almost a little selfish. It might not be the case. People don't see it that way, but I, for myself, saw it that way of, well, I'm not just going to go to space, and it's not for free, and do this just because, oh, I want to have some fun. And that's not why I loved space, but still, it wasn't enough for me. Like, oh, this is just for me. The thing that really made me accept this opportunity and fully embrace it and be okay with it, was the fact that when, growing up, and even now, but it's little bit better now, when I looked at the space sector, I didn't feel like I could ever do it because of what I was seeing. It was all, mostly white men, to be blunt. There were, some women, but they were, even I said Roberta Bonder, but they were white women, and no one who looked like me, no one who had my background. And I thought about all the times I doubted myself and didn't think I deserved to do this or that I could do this. And then I thought about my friends, all the other little girls who had dreams like these, and even grown up women, right? But they didn't think that they could do it. So the thing that made me really want to do this was that if this could be used to support other women, and help them see themselves in this space, literally in space, but in this field as well, if they could see themselves in that, if they could be represented in that, and if that belong in it and that they deserve it, then then that's all I could ever ask for, and that's all I really want to do with it. So it's not really something that I didn't want to do it originally because I didn't see the purpose behind it or what it could do. And, on this journey so far with all the other projects that I've been working on, I've been able to see the effect that something as what you think is as small as representation can really have. In terms of, the part of mental preparation, I struggled with this for a long time also because it seems far away, but it isn't that far away. When the moment comes, then you kind of panic of, okay, what should I do here? So for mental preparation, I, especially this past year, have reflected a lot on my faith. I've leaned a lot on my faith, really practicing mindfulness. In Urdu, we say murakba. In Arabic, I don't know if it's murakaba or, but that principle in our faith, so that, when you're in space, you don't want to be thinking about anything else. You want to be there. You want to be focused on that. So, I've been, for mental preparation, doing that. In terms of physical preparation, the training doesn't really happen until a few weeks or a few days before, you go. So that's a little stressful, but in general, just staying healthy, taking care of yourself, doing what you can to, especially during these times in COVID when, you're at home. So, yeah.
At the moment, do you have like a date or like a time period where this is the time you're going to be gone from Earth?
Great question. It was supposed to be actually in 2020, but then not only did COVID happen, they had their test flight exploded, and unfortunately, one of the pilots passed away, and the other one obviously suffered severe PTSD, and so they had to start from square one because you've got to get the approval from the agency, and if your spaceship explodes, well, that's not approval from the agency. So they're in the final stages of testing. They're almost done. They have the spaceship ready. They haven't given an exact date and time, but they've given kind of like a broad time range of some point in next year, hopefully. If not next year, then the year after that, but no later, hopefully. So, yeah.
You're currently studying astrophysics and neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you decide to pursue these fields specifically? And how do you hope to maybe combine your passion for space and neuroscience for future applications inside and outside of the space sector?
That's really good. When people hear that I love astrophysics, but I also love neuroscience. They often think, wait, that has nothing to do with each other. Why are you studying such different things? But actually, again, I talked about how my love of space was born, again, by paying attention, by curiosity. But my interest in neuroscience was very much born out of my love for space, because to me, the brain was just like the universe that you look up to each night. It's vast, it's ever expanding with knowledge, it's marvelous, and it's also one of the greatest mysteries in on this earth, but maybe in the universe too. We do not understand the brain to the extent and almost in the same way that we do not understand space. There's so much unknown in this one organ in our heads. And as I looked out and as I was thinking and asking all these questions, I also thought about, well, who is asking these questions in my head? Where is this coming from? Those types of questions. And neuroscience is really the key, in my opinion, to discovering more about ourselves as humans, but also of being able to discover more in the universe as we find out more about ourselves, and how those two are connected in terms of using it in space. Well, I mentioned Roberta Bonder again. She was a neuroscientist and an astronaut. If we become an interplanetary species, or even just astronauts who go to space for research purposes, space is a very different condition. Not only is it more isolating, but it's a different environment, and it has different effects physically on the body. So why wouldn't it have different effects in the brain, psychologically and biologically? So it's really important to study those changes, if there are any, so that we can mitigate them when we're sending more and more people in commercial space travel, but also just in general, like the plan to go to Mars, which is happening really soon. It's really important to understand these things, specifically for our brain, which is why I just love studying neuroscience and astrophysics.
How are you able to manage, your various projects while doing a double major?
That's a good question. To some people, it may look like everything's under control all the time. It is not under control, and I will assure you that. It's a process. I don't think you ever just reach somewhere where you're like, okay, I figured it out, and this is good. Life is changing all the time. You're doing new things. Two things. Number one, prioritization is really big, because there will be periods like, okay, I just had my final exams last week, and I had like multiple things, like projects and conferences and things like that, and I had to prioritize in that situation my finals. I needed to, because that's what I'm studying, and that's my diploma. And so and in this case too, I had to push it until after finals. That's one example. But also, this is the work that I love doing. This is my this is why I do what I do, is to share knowledge and to get more people, give them access to this field. So if there's some assignment I have to do, I'll do it. I will figure it out. I will everything's figure outable. That's the term. Everything is figure outable. You can figure everything out if it matters enough to you. So that brings me to my second point, is that to this question of doing so many things, how do you manage your time? I might do many things, but they're all kind of under the same umbrella. It's not like I'm doing everything in the world, from like sports to music to like just random subjects. It's I know what I care about. I know what I feel like I know what my purpose is, and so I work on that. And once you kind of discover and reflect on what it is that you care about, focus on that. You can have obviously hobbies and other things I do too, but because you need to prioritize, again, back to point one, that time management is key, and you need to put your all into that. And so yeah, I do a lot of things, but not like divergent. They're kind of under the same umbrella, and that's how I kind of maintain it. But also, mental health is important. If you feel that it's too much, people think you have to say yes to everything. You do not. Then you're not going to do anything well. If you say yes to everything, you won't do anything well, because you're so drained. You need to, make sure your cup is full so that it overflows, like Oprah says, so that it overflows and you can give to other people. So I do have to say no to things sometimes, or to, be like, I can do it later. I can't do it right now. So yeah.
What advice would you have for high school students that are maybe struggling with, managing schoolwork and extracurricular activities. And
Yeah.
knowing how to manage your time isn't only important, now it's something you need to keep working on as you get older,
Yeah.
when you have more responsibilities.
Yeah. Well, I remember high school was because you had to do a lot of things, and you had to have something in well, it was an IB program, so you had to do creativity and action and service. You had to do all these things. Um, Let me just say that once you kind of leave that, um, it's that's just not a sustainable thing, to be honest. But in high school, that's what you need to do, unfortunately, for resumes and for whatever. But again, my advice would be that whatever you are doing, even if you have to do certain things, like you have to do music on the side, you have to do some sport on the side, even if you wouldn't voluntarily do it unless your school mandated it. What I would advise is that find a way to adapt that so that it has meaning to you, so that you find some purpose in it, so that you it really does matter and that you care about it. For instance, I will say, okay, so for my extracurriculars, you had to be part of like 3 clubs, they said. Okay. And that might be like, okay, that's taking up a lot of my time. I have to do schoolwork, I have to do all these other things in addition to outside of school. How am I going to fit this in? Make sure it's something you care about. Don't just do things for the resume. Honestly, like, you can build your resume up all you want. It's at the end of the day, it's like the real world things that you do, the experiences that you have, how you treat people, your drive, your commitment, your passion, and the action that you take that matters. It's not like, okay, how many clubs did you do? And just in the long run, in my experience personally, and from what I've seen from other people, that's not what really matters. So I would say don't stress too much about it. But if you are struggling with time management, again, make sure you're doing things that matter to you, not just because you have to do it for a resume.
You're currently working as a mentor for the United Nations Spaces for Women program. So why did you decide to join this program, and what activities have you worked on to help spread your passion for space to other young girls and women?
Yeah. Well, I joined the Space for Women mentorship program with UNOSA because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not doing this I'm not going to space or the Virgin Galactic program for fun. It really is to support other women in achieving their goals, specifically in STEM, just because that's my area of expertise-ish. And with the mentorship program, students or young women who don't necessarily have direct access to the fields. That's very, it's very difficult, especially when you're in school and you have so much going on. You don't always have time or even the resources. There's if you're not upper middle class or in that sort of class, it's very difficult to get the time or have the resources like a laptop or the internet to then go out and get those experiences. So with this mentorship program, I'm able to connect these students if they reach out on LinkedIn, if they have access to that, if they reach out via email or whatever, or sign up on the website of UNOSA. I can connect them to the network of people that I know who are actually in the field, so that way these and speaking to me as well if they want to, so that we can work together and figure out a plan, especially if they're students, of okay, how do you actually get real world experience and see if this is something that you want to do. So I'll connect them with internship opportunities, with volunteer opportunities. If those are privileges, internships and volunteers, because you're not being paid. But if you are in a situation where you need to be paid because you don't have the means, then we'll find you a work study option, so that you get experience in the field. So yeah, the whole point of the mentorship program and what I do and I work with other mentors to do is create access to this field so that there's an entry point, because one of the hardest parts is entering the field and being able to be in it. So by connecting them with people in the field already, having meetings with them, getting them opportunities with internships and stuff, it really opens the field for more women, and particularly women of color.
What inspired you to start, your global initiative and vision for education? Has your opinions regarding the future of education, have they changed before and after starting this program?
Yeah. Well, the reason that I started Give, that organization, was actually because my opinions changed before I started the organization regarding education. I had, you know, a lot of students, I feel this way from the conversations that I've had and from, just online discourse and stuff, where there is this lack of sort of meaning and lack of purpose in a lot of secondary education systems. And I had this mindset previously of we should feel grateful for education, which obviously we should. I still have that mindset. You should feel grateful for having the opportunity to get educated, to have an education. So many people don't. And I thought, and I did a research project, and I thought the only way to really understand the impact of education is to see how it's changed the lives of those who don't have it or who didn't have it before. I'm from Pakistan, or my parents are from Pakistan too, so we went to Pakistan and visited some of the schools that were there for adults and for children, and saw and interviewed how education had changed their lives. It was not what I expected. It was not the view that we have in these Western countries of, oh, they're getting education, it's completely transformative and we should be grateful. That's not what happened. It was the basic things like reading, being able to read a clock. It was the basic things like doing basic math. Those very fundamental things were the things that changed their lives, because they knew now they could read the clock and see when to take their medication. They knew, how to balance their money, or so on and so forth. It was not the redundant tasks that we do often in high school, where we're just kind of consuming all this information, putting it onto a piece of paper and then forgetting it. And many of these people after that would go on and they would get to specify and explore their interests, whether it was mechanical engineering or writing or poetry, whatever it was. So then I came back and I was having a little bit of a crisis, because I was like, okay, well, this is not what I thought was happening. Yes, we should be grateful to go to school, but at the same time, we need to recognize that this is not what education really looks like. This is not what true learning really means. And I was seeing a lot of people, including myself at times, who were, suffering from depression or anxiety or unhealthy levels of stress because of school, which should never be the case, because it's supposed to be this liberating institution. There were people who would take their own lives because of school, because of the stress they were feeling, or because of these standards of, you need to get this, you need to do this to get into this place, and so on and so forth. And again, like I said, people had this lack of meaning and purpose in their lives. So, I decided that I had been complaining about it for a while. I'd written a research paper on all the problems that were there, but that wasn't enough, because that just made me more depressed about it. And I said, okay, well, we can do something, or we can try to do something. And so, I made Give, and the goal of that is to develop a holistic 21st century educational model, curriculum, and system using neuroscience and learning science research from psychology to prevent this growing mental health epidemic that we see, and really unlock the full potential, because we all have potential. Every student, every child, every human being has potential, and a lot of the time it's dissipated in schools because there is this lack of freedom and choice in what you do. So we're trying to develop that model that fosters creativity, curiosity, character, and innovation that's needed also in solving the problems that we face now, like climate change. So that's what it was really born out of, is giving kids a chance and an equal chance at doing and exploring what they love, so that they can fulfill their potential and their meaning and their purpose here on Earth, instead of just doing things how they're told, when they're told without any reason why.
What's an issue you've seen affecting, women and young girls that you hope to maybe solve through these projects, or maybe even during your lifetime? What's an issue you're dedicated to, being part of the change for?
Yeah. Okay, well, there's a lot of things. I think a lot about, the child labor happening in some countries, the keeping girls at home instead of going to school, which COVID has really set us back, especially in developing areas, really set us back in terms of the education of girls and women. They're staying home and then, getting pregnant. And so that's an issue that, we're trying to work on with GIVE to create access to those resources. But what I think is a prominent issue for women entering any field, or even trying to, in schools, it really does start at home, but also in schools, is bias against women. And the reason I think that that's a really big issue, and that in my existence and in my being and by doing this mentorship program and trying to sort of mediate, is the fact that that bias is often internalized by women themselves. I know I've internalized bias in many ways of, like, if people say you're too loud or bossy, or if a man was doing it, they would say he's confident and a leader, right? Things like that. Comments about who you can be and what you cannot do because of simply being a woman. And let me be clear too, the reason that this is a really important issue to me is that it doesn't affect everybody in the same way, right? For instance, white women hold a certain level of privilege. Yes, there is the pay gap as well for white women in any field, but the pay gap is bigger for women of color, and the bias that women of color face, or of different ethnicities, or be it, Muslim women, whatever it may be, those are different issues because it's intersectional. Now you've got bias against women, but also bias against their race, bias against their religion, or whatever. So I think that's one of the biggest issues, is bias, because not only because it's being thrown at you and then it informs, what you believe about yourself and what others believe about you, but then you internalize it. And that's the voice in your head all the time. And, people can tell you that you cannot or can do something all they want. That doesn't do anything, and that doesn't have an effect on you until you believe it. And so that's why I think through the mentorship program, by getting girls to believe in themselves, and women of color to believe in themselves, and kind of push that bias away and dispel those myths, that will have more women in these fields and more women lifting each other up.
Yeah, definitely. Because you even see sometimes, even in schools, especially with STEM, sometimes teachers will focus or see more STEM potential in male students versus female students.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so I know that I'm kind of ranting about this, but I'm just going to bring up one study that was done in schools where, actually two studies. Number one, there was a study where it was like a science project that they were doing, and they were meant to fail. It was a group of boys and a group of girls, and the project was set up so that they would fail. And what they were trying to test is the response to failure. And they found that when the boys failed, they didn't say, I am stupid. They said, this is stupid, right? But when the girls failed, they called themselves stupid because they didn't have this belief in their abilities that was propagated by education, instead of saying that the project itself was stupid. And the second thing was that they, again, had a group of boys and a group of girls. When the girls took this mathematics test by themselves, they scored extremely well. But when the boys were in the room taking the test with them, not the same group of girls, another group of girls, they did much worse than the group of girls who were doing it alone, because of this internalized bias about women being good at math or not being good at math, or men being better at math, or something like that. So just interesting studies. There's research on this.
If anyone has any questions, please feel free to write in the chat, or raise your hand. That's completely fine. At the moment, you're going to space, in about 1 or 2 years. Do you know what your plan is after you come back? Do you have
I think it froze there for a second. Hold on. Oh, okay, sorry. I think my internet froze there for a bit. Sorry, you were saying the plan after coming back from that. But yeah. this is what I think I've learned over the years is you can never really plan anything. I didn't plan this. I didn't plan much of what has happened so far. So coming back from that trip, I know that I will continue this work for sure of empowering women and young girls and making sure that they have opportunities like that too, and have more than just a chance of doing things like this, and that especially the commercial space field is not just one group of people as the astronaut programs have been so far. And so I know I will continue that work, and I will give is my life's mission. That's what I work on, and I will continue to do that, and help in any way I can. But that's that's the only thing I can plan for, because I know that that's what I meant to do. Other than that, I don't think you can plan anything. Okay, I think there's a question in the chat. Can I answer that one?
Yes, completely.
Okay. So how did you feel when you realized you had been chosen to become an astronaut? Good question. I was quite young. I think I was 11 years old, and I didn't really process it, to be honest. I didn't know fully what that meant. I knew that, going to space, everybody knows that, but it didn't feel real. And that's why I didn't process. So I didn't think about it very much for a long time. I sort of, until I started doing this type of work, it didn't seem very real. So, but I was extremely grateful, and immediately was like, okay, now that this has happened, how can I use this for, to get other girls involved in this, and get them on the STEM path, or keep them on the STEM path. Because again, I wasn't really happy for myself. It was like, okay, we're making progress here, in terms of representation. So that's probably how I felt, but I still to this day have not processed it completely.
A student is asking, do you know how long you will be spending in space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they've kind of changed it a couple of times since they started this program, and they're exploring actually different options, of sending some people to the International Space Station for longer than the time period, like probably a week or whatever. So I'm not too sure. What they have planned for now is like a day. It's like a day trip. Like it takes time to get there, then you're there, and then you come back. It's probably a day trip, because it's commercial space flight, right? It's like if you get on an airplane and you go and you're flying across the world. It's kind of like that. So for now, it's a day, but they keep on changing the program, so we will see. But that's what it is planned for now.
So a student has a question regarding how you made the choice to pick these two majors, and how they should, how they personally should decide what they want to pursue in university, because they have many interests within the STEM field.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. Look, you don't have to know your whole life by that age. Everyone is changing all the time, so don't feel that pressure. It's good that you have a lot of interest, because then you care about something. I think it's worse if you care about nothing, then it's harder to find something. But if you care about a lot of things, maybe, or this is what the advice I give to my mentees in the mentorship program is, you got to get real world experience, because in university you will get that, but in high school you don't get a lot of that. You get more of like the school side of things, and not reflective of the way things are. And you might find when you get that real world experience, I don't really like this very much, or I really love this. And that's why it's really important to try and reach out. Always ask for help, okay? No one does this alone. Reach out to people, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's via email, and you do a quick Google search. Reach out and ask if you can talk to them, if you can have a conversation with them on Zoom. on Skype, whatever you're comfortable with. If you can, if they know of any opportunities in which you can gain experience, like internships. So reach out to people in the fields that you're interested in to get real world experience. But if you are, on a shorter timeline, I would say still do that for sure. Do that over the year. But once you get to university and, you've kind of chosen something, you are able to change. You're allowed to change your program. A lot of people I know, well, I'm at the University of Toronto, so I don't know if it's like that at every university, but I know a lot of people who choose something in their first year and then they change it for their second year after having experienced sort of the classes and talking to professors. So, don't feel like you need to know everything and that this is definite and that, this is, if you don't get it right, it's the end of the world. It's not. You have time to figure it out. But I would say the best way to do it is get real world experience by asking for help.
What advice do you have for students that want to become astronauts?
Yeah. So as we know, it's very rare to become astronauts because of just they don't send a lot of people up there. But, we have the internet now, so we have access to a lot of information. And if you go through, depending on the organization, here we have the Canadian Space Agency, you guys have NASA, Europe has the ESA, and I believe the UAE has a new astronaut program, which is amazing. So, go on their websites, look at the requirements for being an astronaut, because many will have, usually they're the same, but sometimes they'll be a little different. They do require certain degrees. It's not like there's an astronaut degree. That's not how it is. But usually they'll want someone who has some type of degree in a STEM field specifically. So look into those requirements. Think about how you can start that process right now and get a leg up. I would also say that there are internship opportunities at these agencies. For instance, at the Jet Proportions Lab, you can, or volunteer opportunities that you can go there and experience and make connections, and have those relationships, so that when the time comes and you want to be an astronaut, you have kind of a community there. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing is looking at those requirements and thinking about when you're in university what you need to do from there. But most of all, I started off by saying that it's rare and it's definitely difficult, but you must, the biggest thing is believe in yourself. There will be so many times where your biggest enemy is yourself, because self-doubt really creeps in. You look at the statistics and you're thinking that could never be me. It's not possible. But there are astronauts who got declined multiple times before being accepted when they were like 50 or something. There are stories like that too. So if you really care about it and you really believe that this is something where this is what you're meant to do and that you can serve humanity in that way, then when things get hard, don't give up, and just really believe in yourself, despite what the world tells you and despite all the statistics that are out there. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. You're an extremely inspirational person, and we're all really excited to see you go into space.
Oh, no, thank you. I find, the work that you're doing at such a young age, you guys are, again, like all the advice I just told you, you're already doing. You're reaching out to people, you're asking for advice. That's sort of like, this is like a mini mentorship session. And I really am inspired by seeing, young women and women who might look like me or not look like me, but women in general doing this stuff. So thank you guys. And even if you're not women and you're just a guy here listening and learning about these issues, that's also great. And yeah, let me know if I can ever do anything or help out with the work that you're doing, and I would love to join you again another time. But yeah, thank you guys. No, do not thank me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I hope it's daytime for you, so I hope you have a good day. And for everyone else, have a very good night.
Yeah. I will put my email in the chat if anybody needs to reach out at mail.utoronto.ca. You can probably find it on LinkedIn too, but I'll just put it here for now. If you have any other questions, or if you about the UN Space for Women mentorship program, about anything that maybe you didn't ask today, I am available and I will get back to you as soon as I can. And yeah, thank you guys for coming. I think there's another one under what requirements and qualifications do they choose those astronauts? Yeah, so again, depending on the, sorry, I know maybe we're over time here, but I'll just quickly guide them. Yeah, depending on the country that you're in, there should be a space agency that you have. Visit their website and look at the astronaut application, and they'll have a list of requirements there, and they'll let you know what sort of qualifications you need to have in terms of your degree, in terms of work experience. Sometimes you need more than just a bachelor's. You probably need a master's, and some work experience in the field. So look at that. Have a look at that. If you can't find it, email me again and tell me what country you're in, and I'll give it to you. But that's all you need to do. Okay. Thank you, Miriam, for coming. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Yeah, bye.